Hello, this is TurboDog702 for the Castlevania Symphony of the Night Any Percent tutorial. In this section of the tutorial, we'll be showing you one of the more outdated methods in order to do the Relic skip to get into the final Dracula chamber. This one is still in use for some categories, so I figured I'd cover it for the sake of completeness, as I try to do with many of the big skips. This is known as the Shiftline version of it. What we're going to do is we're going to try to expand the region of the screen so that we can fall out of bounds, turn into a bat, fly out of bounds up, and hit a transition point where we can go into the elevator room or the save room, depending on which direction and how we do the trick. This is kind of similar to the reverse shift line glitch, in that it does involve that point at which the screen scrolling barrier occurs, where if you're on one side, the screen is completely stagnant and doesn't move at all, but once you move past that point into a room, it starts following Alucard. So while as the reverse shift line, we are trying to break that barrier with a slight screen freeze motion. With this one, we're trying to go from outside of it into it, and that'll expand the screen outside of it. Let's go ahead and go inside, and you'll start to see what I'm talking about. So here we are. We're inside of the clock room. In order to do this glitch, you need to have access to 2 heart refreshes, I believe, or 2 other versions of screen freeze. 2 heart refreshes is how we used to do it inside of the route, so that's what I've chose to do for this. Using the leap stone will make this a much easier trick, but it's not necessary. So what we're going to do is you'll notice that the screen starts scrolling right about here on the clock. So this is where our screen scroll barrier is. What we're going to do is we're either going to use a backdash, like that, with heart refresh buffering, in order to open up the screen, or you can use a dive kick for the same effect. You'll notice what I'm doing is I'm chaining heart refreshes. This is exactly like map buffering or pause buffering. Basically, once one heart refresh is going off in one hand, I'm holding the other hand's heart refresh, and I can chain them together. And during that time, you notice that I'm moving very slightly. Another way you can do this that's far superior is to use the dive kick. The reason why the dive kick is nice is it moves faster, so you can get more pixels horizontally in more quick order. So here's an example of that. And all we're trying to do is we're basically trying to open up a space. Like each heart refresh that we're doing is opening up more and more space for Alucard to be in. So right now we've just passed that screen scroll barrier, so now we need to do probably a couple more heart refreshes before we're able to enter it. The least that I've been able to do to get inside of this for safety is 4. But you can do it with as short as 2, I believe, as long as your positioning is great. And then you can see, like, once I come to the outside of the screen, I use a backdash at the edge of the screen in order to fall down into the space. Once you fall down into the space, it's very important that you turn into a bat quickly. You don't want to do it too fast so that you do a bat dash back into the other room, but you want to do it quickly enough so that you don't fall down. If you do fall down, this is what happens. It's not game ending, but you end up like kind of locking the screen until you transform again, and you end up down here, and this is your transition area into Olroc's quarters. So don't do that. The other thing that can happen, which I have a file that has the screen scroll, or not the screen scroll, but the shift line enabled. The other thing that can happen is that. Again, if you transform too early, you can bat dash out. Now what we want to do is we want to fall into this area and we're going to fly up. And we need to fly at a very particular altitude, and then afterward, we need to tap left and bat button in order to get a screen flicker. If you go too low and you try to initiate it, you fall back in bounds, or you end up in the ceiling, which I'll try to do. See, like that. These types of things can happen if you don't transform and press left at the same time, if one is desync from the other, or you're just not in the right positioning for the trick to occur. If you fly just too high in general, like you keep flying up, then this happens, and you end up out of bounds that way. It is noteworthy that you're only like partially out of bounds at this place. So, for example, I'm holding to the right now. I can't just completely fly out of bounds at this point like I could with reverse Shiftline. So that's another thing that's to note about this trick. Okay, so what do you do? I've mentioned all these things and how to set this up. So once you get this Shiftline opened, what you need to do is you need to fly Alucard up until you can see just a little bit of his wing. You should play with pixel pictures, but this is a pretty decent one for me. Like, I can see just the tip of his wing a little bit. You'll have to play around with it until you can find a visual that works for you. Once you get to that point, you have to press left and bat at the same time, and hopefully you get the trick to happen. So I fly up. The other thing to note is you can't just keep tapping up, per se, because the bat has a minimal distance that it can go up, it seems like. So if you need to, and you don't feel like you got the pixel and you're a couple pixels off maybe, it's better to go down some and then go back up. Okay, this is what happens if you manage to get the glitch. At this point, I'm holding up left and mashing jump. And eventually, you'll get into the elevator room. Okay. There are methods to make this flickerless, so that you get very few flickers, like only 2 of them. Obviously, I got a bad version of it. I'll go ahead and show that again real quick, just to show it off. So I go out of bounds, I fly up, try to get the right wing positioning. This might be good. Then I go left and bat. That was a good one. It wasn't quite, 2 flickers, but it was a lot less. And that's how you can skip into this room. So real quick to show up the setup one more time. Normally you would go, whoops, forgot that this was this one. So normally what you would do, you'd have your 2 heart refreshes equipped, you'd come into this room, you'd try to dive kick, and then chain heart refreshes. As one heart refresh goes off, just hold the hand for the other one, and you can chain them together. Wait until you've broken that screen scrolling barrier by about, 1 or 2 of these. Usually I do 4. You can do it with as little as 2, I think. Once you've opened it up, you come over here, backdash, turn into the bat, fly up, try to get your positioning so that only a few pixels of your wing are showing, and then you press left and bat, but I missed it there. Obviously, this is much easier to do with the duplicator because you can do more repetitions of the heart refresh. The reason why it's relevant that you can do it with only 2 is for things like low percent, where they still have to use this method because they don't have access to bat all the time. If you were to do this with backdash, it's the same concept. It's just you're using a backdash and canceling that with the heart refresh. This one takes more repetitions of it, obviously, because backdashing is slower momentum-wise than a dive kick. But you can do it the same way. Alright, that should be good enough. Yeah, okay. And that's how you can get out of bounds that way. Same idea, though. That'll do it for this section of the tutorial, I think. Again, this is mostly an outdated method, especially for the any percent route. But if you find yourself doing odd categories, I figured that I would mention this for the sake of completeness. So now you know how to do the Shiftline and reverse Shiftline methods of this trick. This is TurboDog702 for the Castlevania Symphony of the Night any percent tutorial.